Tonight, startling developments in a confounding 30-year mystery, the disappearance and likely murder of Revelle Balmain. Back in 1994, Revelle was a beautiful model and dancer, but she kept a secret. She also worked as an escort. When the 22-year-old vanished, suspicion fell on one man, her last client. At the time, there wasn't enough evidence to bring charges, so the case gathered decades of dust until a fresh team of detectives was assigned to investigate. Now they've uncovered new clues and new persons of interest, meaning there's finally genuine hope for long-awaited answers. Hers was a face to remember, but no one could imagine it would be for all the wrong reasons. Nearly 30 years ago, Revelle Balmain suddenly disappeared. She hasn't been seen since, and her presumed murder remains unsolved.
When you have someone in your orbit that has come to harm's way, it is very jarring and distressing, and you carry that with you forever.
Can you believe that we're still wondering what happened to Revelle, who's responsible after all these years?
I can't believe that. I really can't.
In 1994, Jane King was Revelle's boss. She ran a Sydney escort agency with then-husband Zoran Stanojevic. Revelle was a part of the murky world of the sex industry, joining Jane's agency as an escort just 6 weeks before she disappeared. The 22-year-old was also an aspiring model, her first magazine cover coming out in the days just after her disappearance.
There's a huge billboard there at the top of William Street. She was on a number of the bus shelters as well. I just had goosebumps all over. It was terrible. It was like she was everywhere and she was nowhere.
Plagued by evasion and silence, it was a troubled and challenging case right from the start. But tonight, for the first time, Jane King publicly reveals shocking new details of the night Revelle went missing.
That piece of evidence was never found beforehand.
Details that expose new suspects.
We have information that that person could be involved in the disappearance of Revelle Balmain.
What can you tell me about the disappearance of Revelle Balmain? Anything? And fresh evidence laying bare contradictions and false alibis.
He lied from the beginning. I don't believe a word that comes out of Zoran's mouth.
That's why we have a fresh inquest at the coroner's court to examine evidence that was never tested before.
You know, the unfortunate thing is that we didn't get enough time to spend. We did as much as we could in the time that we had.
Revelle's older sister, Sue Ellen Simpson, has lived with grief and uncertainty for too long. Do you remember the moment you were told that your sister was missing?
I was beside myself. I just, felt like I was going to break into a million pieces.
On Saturday, the 5th of November 1994, Revelle had a booking with new client Gavin Samer at his home in the Sydney suburb of Kingsford. Her appointment ended at 7 p.m. Before leaving, Revelle called a friend. It would be the last time anyone heard from her.
Police in Sydney fear for the safety of a young model who's been missing for 6 days. Revelle Balmain has failed to keep several...
Gavin Samer claimed soon after that call he dropped Revelle at a nearby pub. But it was the discovery the very next day of the young woman's bag, shoes and diary discarded not far from his home that left Revelle's family fearing the very worst.
If you know of anything, just ring the police. It's as easy as that. We just want her back.
When I had heard that the residents of Kingsford had handed her items in, then it became real to me, and that's when I just went into shock.
So it was the discovery of her possessions that really scared you?
Yeah. well, it just gave us knowledge that there was something terribly wrong.
That her possessions were found so quickly, so soon after she'd gone missing. Did you think you'd know in a more concrete way what had happened to her?
You would think that, but as the days went on and the weeks went on, you lose hope pretty quickly.
At the time, all suspicion was on Gavin Seymour, and for many, it remains a well-founded focus.
Can you tell me what you know about the disappearance of Revelle Balmain?
See, I've got no thoughts, I've got no interest, just piss off.
Can you
As the last known person to have been with her, and with her possessions found so close to his home, Seymour was the immediate prime suspect in Revelle's presumed murder, an allegation he has always denied and one he's never been charged over. Now, a stunning revelation. Revelle's boss, Jane King, claims there is new evidence Gavin Seymour is telling the truth.
I did not ever think that Gavin Seymour was involved in the disappearance of Revelle Balmain.
And why is that?
I just thought he was just way too obvious. And I have had evidence put to me that does take Seymour out of the picture to some degree. Evidence that the initial police never found.
Can you tell us what that is?
I can tell you that his whereabouts were verified, and they weren't verified by the first batch of police that investigated.
That new information turns the case on its head. In fact, a number of recent breakthroughs have been so significant they're to be put before the coroner in February next year. It may have taken nearly 30 years, but police have now uncovered glaring contradictions that have changed the entire focus of the investigation. The lines of inquiry that you're pursuing at the moment, how confident are you that they could well crack open the case, solve the case?
Well, they will go a long way to solving the investigation. We were trying to establish if Revelle was to meet any other person on the night, that being a client, associate or friend, on the night she disappeared.
And that's the key?
That's the key.
Detective Chief Inspector Stuart Bell was tasked with the near impossible, to make headway where no one else had. He's spent the last 3 years combing through the archive, re-interviewing witnesses and employing new technology to hunt for old clues to build his case. Do you feel you know what happened to Revelle Balmain and at whose hands?
I'm hopeful that the inquest and the testing of the evidence will give a clearer picture of what happened to Revelle on the 5th of November 1994.
While the evidence is yet to be tested, much of the new focus centres on Jane King's now ex-husband, Zoran Steinfort, and his changing story. He has never been arrested or charged over Revelle's suspected murder, but police believe he deserves further investigation. Zoran was the co-owner of the escort agency Select Companions and its principal driver, delivering escorts to and from their appointments. But there are inconsistencies in what he told police. Just 10 days after Revelle was reported missing, Zoran claimed he wasn't working the night she disappeared. He said he was at home with a heavily pregnant Jane. Why did Zoran tell police that he stayed in that night initially?
Did he say that? Well, I wouldn't know why he would say that, because he didn't stay in.
Then, 4 years later, a backflip. Zoran admitted he wasn't home that night, but as you'll see, his new version of events still doesn't add up. Where were you on the night she disappeared, Zoran?
I said everything what I could said.
Why did you tell police initially that you were at home that night when you weren't?
I don't like talking about.
I think you do. Former escort agency co-owner and driver Zoran Steinfort is under intense pressure to explain his whereabouts the night 22-year-old Revelle Balmain disappeared in November 1994. After first claiming he was home all night, Zoran said he was out driving another escort to and from jobs. But phone calls critical to his alibi were never made, according to official records, something that confounds former wife Jane King, who ran the escort agency. Well, the story that Zoran told does not match the phone records. When he said he was being called and told to pick up and drop off, none of that matches.
Well, that was very strange.
Why would he lie about that?
I don't know. I don't know why he would lie about it.
Why do the phone records not match your story, Zoran?
Silly.
Revelle Balmain was working as an escort to raise extra money to support her first love, dancing. She was due to join an ensemble in Japan, and Saturday the 5th of November 1994 was to be her last day at the Select Companions agency. As well as an appointment with Gavin Seymour in Kingsford, Revelle had been booked by Zoran to meet Serbian friends later that night. The 10 o'clock booking, do you remember who that was with?
It was for somebody that Zoran knew, a man called Boyan.
And is that usual?
Well,
That
I don't
Zoran
think
would
it
nominate?
was usual that he would ask for Revelle to see someone specifically, but I think when the clients were people that he knew, then he would ask the booker to assign, you know, the most attractive people on the books to those clients.
And that was Revelle Balmain.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, police back in the day did not interview Zoran's Serbian friends, who were due to meet Revelle at 10 p.m. that night. Incredibly, in 2021, Crime Stoppers received an anonymous tip-off warning them about the man in this photo. Detective Chief Inspector Stuart Bell, now running the investigation, is appealing for more detail.
We have information that that person could be involved in the disappearance of Revelle Balmain. We want to identify that person and speak to anyone that does know him, and hopefully they can come forward and provide that information to us, not anonymously.
Does that person live in Australia or overseas?
I can't comment on that. Sorry, Tara.
We believe this man is Boyan Provilovic, Zoran's friend and Revelle's last intended client. While Jane has never met Boyan, she now has some startling information about what Zoran did for him the day after Revelle's disappearance.
Zoran arranged a ticket for that client to leave Australia the next day through a travel agent we used to use all the time.
You have evidence that he did that?
I've seen it.
And did Zoran say why he did that?
I didn't know. I didn't know that at that time.
And how well did Zoran know Boyan?
Well, that's hard to say, but clearly he must have known them fairly well to organise a flight out from Australia for the following day.
To
Thailand.
Is this your friend?
I know him, yeah.
Yes. Why did you organise for him to leave Australia the morning after Revelle disappeared? Why did you do that?
No, I have to work. I'm very sorry.
Where were you? What happened? Can you tell me?
I have to work, sorry.
The twists and turns of this case are extraordinary. While Zoran has changed his story over time, we now know Jane's actions immediately on learning of Revelle's disappearance were also curious. She's always maintained in the hours before Revelle went missing, she and Zoran were dining at a pizza restaurant. The following morning, on learning Revelle couldn't be reached, Jane made an urgent call to the restaurant.
The whole conversation, there was a degree of panic in the conversation. And there was a degree of urgency in the message. It was obvious that, someone was trying to establish this timeline quickly.
Adam Irwin was the maitre d' of the Edge restaurant and at the time made a police statement recounting Jane's conversation. Can you remember the words that the woman used to you on the phone?
We were in your restaurant on Saturday. Can you identify us? There's a police investigation into a murder. We need to sort of establish that we were in your restaurant. Can you do that?
I certainly didn't say that. There's no way I said that.
Are you sure?
Absolutely sure. I didn't use that word. There's no way I would have used the word murdered. I said missing. I did not say murdered.
She says she never used murder but said that someone was missing.
If I said that in the statement, I would very much feel that that's the truth. Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is I actually really stand by that statement.
Whether Jane used the word murder or missing, what raises questions about her actions is the haste with which she tried to cement her whereabouts on the night Revelle vanished. It came before she even reported Revelle's disappearance. Why did you act so quickly? This is just the morning after she's gone missing.
I just thought it was an important thing to do as soon as possible.
But you've rung the restaurant before you've rung the police.
Yeah, I did. Given the nature of the business that we were in, I felt that it was important to be able to account for our whereabouts should we be asked.
Feels like you thought you would be asked, that something serious had happened to this woman and that you would be suspects.
Well, I'd never been involved in anything like that in my life.
But you didn't even know what you were involved with at that point.
No, I didn't.
Even after all these years, Adam Irwin remembers his encounter with Jane as odd. At the time, he offered to confirm he'd seen her at the restaurant if she came back in and he remembered her, but she never did. Do you believe she was there?
Personally, no, I don't believe she was there. I remember the conversation. I was thinking, that's just not true. But that's just my personal opinion.
Why didn't you go to the restaurant to identify yourself?
Because I was just exhausted. I was so huge during that pregnancy.
But you definitely went. You definitely went to that restaurant.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely we did. We were in there early at about 5 o'clock. We were definitely in that restaurant.
Jane maintains over the past 30 years, she has always told everyone, including police, the truth about what she knows of Revelle's disappearance. Was there any suggestion that they thought you were involved?
No.
In the murder
not at all.
of
There's
Revelle
never
Balmain?
been any suggestion about that, ever. And I have always assisted the police in every way that I have been able to.
But the most burning question remains. Do you know why Revelle Balmain was murdered? Sue Ellen Simpson will always fight for her little sister, Revelle Balmain. Over the past 30 years, she has physically searched for her body. Today, she is still searching for answers.
I have a need. I have a need to see the person who murdered Revelle charged with her murder and put in jail for the rest of their life.
Why is that a need?
Because when murder is involved, you don't know who or where or why, and you're forever asking those questions, and you're walking around in some sort of daze wondering where she is. Why did someone kill her?
Revelle was a 22-year-old part-time escort, dancer and model who disappeared on the evening of Saturday, November 5th, 1994. One of the last people to speak to her that day was her boss, Jane King. Jane owned the escort agency with her then husband, Zoran Stanojevic. And Do you know why Revelle Balmain was murdered?
No. No.
It's a question that confounds family and investigators. There are plenty of theories, though. For instance, did Revelle owe money? Was she hurt in an altercation? Was she the accidental victim of rough play and then disposed of? Or, as an escort, did she moonlight, see clients off the books and deny the agency its cut? As her last client, Gavin Samer, said she did with him on the night she went missing. So the night that Revelle Balmain went to Gavin Samer's and stayed for the extra hour, would that have triggered Zoran to go and find her to see if she was moonlighting?
No.
How can you be so certain?
Well, that was just not something that ever happened. It just didn't. We didn't go looking to catch people red-handed for things like that.
See, I've got no thoughts, I've got no interest, just piss off.
If Gavin Samer is to be believed, he dropped Revelle at the Red Tomato Inn around 7:30 p.m. and she was never seen again. The only other people who officially knew Revelle was in the Sydney suburb of Kingsford were a booker from the escort agency, Jane, and Zoran. Zoran Stanejevich is a person of interest as he has changed the story of his whereabouts a number of times and has never been able to verify his movements for a critical period of around 4 hours that night.
Why did you tell police a very complicated and elaborate alibi? Why did the phone records not match your story, Zoran?
Silly.
Do you believe Zoran had something to do with this?
I don't want to believe that Zoran had something to do with it. I don't think he stacks up well.
In December 2021, police made a dramatic dawn raid to arrest Zoran. He was wanted for shoplifting, possession of stolen goods, and proceeds of crime. He already had a conviction for cultivating a commercial quantity of cannabis. His charges were unrelated to Revelle Balmain's suspected murder, but it was the renewed police investigation into her death that uncovered his most recent crimes. He served 8 months in jail and is now out on parole. Zoran also assaulted his then-wife Jane King in 2003, for which he underwent domestic violence and anger management courses. How do you expect your former husband to respond when he sees you?
Well, I suppose he'd be angry. I certainly wouldn't make a point of going somewhere where I might run into him. But I don't think he's going to come kicking my door in either. But I would say he'd be pretty angry for me to come on here and talk so openly about this.
Talking openly is what Detective Chief Inspector Stuart Bell is appealing for. Anonymous tip-offs have helped to propel his investigation to this point, but now he needs those people to go on the record.
People have given information anonymously over the years, and we would encourage that person or persons to recontact the police, leave your name so that we can interview you as a witness.
That suggests you value the information.
Yes, we do. We would like that person to come forward so that we can set a timeline for the investigation. It's clear that they are aware of some of the events that occurred in 1994.
And that's what you need, a witness?
We need a witness, yes. Revelle's family and colleagues need to know what happened to her.
Have you made a commitment to the family about that?
I promised Sue Ellen that I would give her a better investigation than she previously had.
Main persons of interest, suspects, the right questions weren't asked. And even the questions that were asked, the answers that were given, they were brushed over. our family sort of questioned these things, and we were just brushed off, just fobbed off. And I'm still wondering who, what and why.
Sue Ellen and her family felt like the initial 1994 police investigation was simply going through the motions. Revelle's broken parents died without knowing what happened to their precious child.
It destroyed them.
Why do you think that original investigation was conducted in that way?
I think because the detective didn't care much about escorts or prostitutes or working girls, whatever you want to call them. But people can't just kill people and get away with it.
This new police investigation, which has led to a second inquest to be heard early next year, may be fighting against the odds of time. But it offers the best hope yet of finally solving this tragic case.
I think it's fantastic.
Do you dream of the day when the fight for justice is over?
I'm on the edge. You know, I think we're so very close, and that would be a fantastic outcome.
The most important thing now is for anyone who knows anything to come forwards. I mean, that's just so critical, because there won't be a fourth investigation into the disappearance of Revelle Balmain, and there won't be a third inquest. I mean, we're really at the pointy end now. So now is the time to just pick up that phone if you know anything at all, and just ask for the Revelle Balmain team, and they will contact you.
If you have any information about Revelle Balmain which could assist the police investigation, call Crime Stoppers on 1800 333 000. Hello, I'm Tara Brown. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. And don't miss out on our extra minutes segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au and the 9Now app.